There are significant doubts surrounding Brandon Aiyuk's willingness to even continue playing in the National Football League.
I don't know that he wants to play. Like, I can't answer that question. Does he want to play NFL football? Does he want to play in Washington? I have no idea.
We're on location at Stanford today, the Oval, and this is the key detail in this entire Brandon Aiyuk saga. His agent, Ryan Williams, is still with him, not abandoning his client. The problem is that Aiyuk is not taking any of his advice, and it's been probably over a year since Brandon Aiyuk has taken his agent's advice. Anyway, in the big picture, this is good news for the 49ers because they stand to financially preserve maneuverability if Brandon Aiyuk just doesn't show up. Remember, I've said that the ball is in Brandon Aiyuk's court now for a while, and by that I mean if he doesn't show up to the 49ers facility, they have no incentive to move him because they don't have to pay him if he doesn't show up. He finished last season on the left squad list, and they created salary cap prorations in his contract. And that means that only the salary cap prorations of the money already paid to Brandon Aiyuk, $48.4 million, most of it coming through signing an option bonus, are scheduled to hit the salary cap. It means only $8.3 million per year over the course of 2026, 2027, and 2028. Obviously affordable, much more affordable than what is technically scheduled to come Brandon Aiyuk's way, but obviously won't with a bunch of non-guaranteed money. But initially, the 49ers were looking at salary cap hits of $14.6 million in 2026, $41.5 million in 2027, up over $43 million in 2028. Status quo means the 49ers keep this smoothed out. Remember, the only money that hits the salary cap is the money that has already been paid to Brandon Aiyuk. But, I mean, you go back and the most telling sign of all here has to be the fact that Brandon Aiyuk could get things moving just by showing up to OTAs, by putting some pressure on the 49ers, by putting himself back in the line and being paid. The 49ers have already given up their leverage in that regard. They've already said they don't expect him to play for them again. And the 49ers would actually have to do something, probably cut him if that were the case. And that would allow Brandon Aiyuk to theoretically sign anywhere. But maybe that's not Brandon Aiyuk's goal. Maybe he doesn't want to play football. And you know, the reason that we can sit here speculating fairly about all of this is because Aiyuk has had a chance to give his side of the story, and he hasn't. All that he's done is post on social media, speeding by Levi's Stadium late last season, recently posted picture of himself counting some money in a driveway. So those are the only clues that we're getting from Brandon Aiyuk at this point. And the clues tend to suggest that football is nowhere in the near future for him. You know, if you follow this through to a logical conclusion, and here as I'm walking around the Oval at Stanford, you can see the Stanford S. Very nice gardening work done here, and you could see all the way down Palm Drive. But just follow this through to its logical conclusion. If Brandon Aiyuk really just wanted to force his way to Washington, you would think that he'd at least be in contact and listening to the advice of his agent, Ryan Williams, whose advice would almost certainly be the same advice that I've been trying to give Brandon Aiyuk, or at least talking about strategically on this show. Show up to the 49ers facility and force their hand. But that obviously is something that Brandon Aiyuk has been unwilling to do. Now, the Aiyuk demise was the start of the great decline of Brock Purdy's wide receiver room, to the point where we have this insane juxtaposition from 2025. Brock Purdy actually ranked as the most accurate quarterback in the entire NFL when targeting an open receiver over 10 yards downfield. 72.5% accurate throw rate, the best in the very league. However, Brock Purdy had the second lowest rate of passes targeting an open receiver downfield. So this is really easy to put together. Brock Purdy, a killer, an absolute killer when he had guys open downfield, but he just didn't have it in 2025, didn't have it in 2024. The separation numbers that I've given you over the past couple of years have matched that. And well, it leads us to the 2026 49ers offseason strategy, which has been obvious 49ers needed to bolster Brock Purdy's receiving room to take advantage of one of the best quarterbacks in football. For whatever reason, there's been confusion about the 49ers strategy, why they're doing what they're doing. Well, to me, it's really simple. They've signed Mike Evans, they've signed Christian Kirk, and they've drafted Dejon Stribbling to give themselves more contested catchability, a greater presence at the all-important X receiver position, more speed, more physicality, just a better receiving room across the board. Because the numbers show us that Purdy deserves it. The fact that he's been a top 5 EPA guy, even higher than that, I'd say a top 2 EPA guy over the course of the past couple of seasons, despite the fact that the 49ers have had such massive problems in the wide receiver room, means that the only way for San Francisco is up if they improve that wideout situation. And that's exactly what they're doing here in the 2026 offseason. So you can trace so many of these struggles back to, I would say, the Brandon Aiyuk contract negotiation in 2024, because he missed training camp for the 49ers, right? That was an ugly situation, the hold in. And then remember that after he got paid, the 49ers caved and they paid Brandon Aiyuk. After he got paid, Brandon wasn't a good player over the first 7 weeks of the season before he tore his ACL. He dropped what should have been a touchdown pass, a dime from Brock Purdy against the Jets in the season opener on Monday Night Football. Aaron Rodgers, by the way, was the quarterback on the other side, and he just said today that this is going to be his last season. He's going to retire after 2026, so congratulations on a fine career for Aaron Rodgers, who now is a yak quarterback. Over 63% of his yardage came through yards after the catch last year. Most by far in the league. Might be time to call it quits now. But anyway, Aaron still playing. Back to that Jets game, though. Brandon Aiyuk was underwhelming coming off of the hold-in without practicing. He was underwhelming for 7 weeks. Juwan Jennings took his shine in week 3 at SoFi Stadium, where he set all kinds of records. And the football, there was another drop in that game that caused the 49ers to lose. I think I could say directly. Brandon Aiyuk early in the football game didn't move the chains with what should have been a catch, and then the 49ers ended up blowing the lead to the Rams. It was bad football. Didn't seem that he was fully checked into it. So we could probably trace the entire devolution back to the contract, and we can probably say that the 49ers would have been better off not paying Brandon Aiyuk. Alas, hindsight is 2020. That all led to the ACL tear. We haven't seen Brandon Aiyuk since. He was around a little bit in 2025, but not enough for the 49ers to preserve his guarantees. And, well, the rest of this mess is absolute history. Now the 49ers are having to rebuild that receiver room almost from scratch. But, the reason, and everything has to be viewed in context. So this 2026 offseason with the 49ers' big investments in receiver should be viewed in context. I mean, it's obvious if you're dead last in separation, if Brock Purdy is a great quarterback when he actually has open guys to throw to, but ranks down near the bottom in terms of availability of open guys to throw to, you've got to invest in the receiver position. Well, in the 2024 offseason, the 49ers were coming off the Super Bowl loss. The 49ers wanted to run it back. The 49ers realized that they needed an X-wide receiver. The past 2 seasons have shown how important an X-wide receiver is to this entire system. So they felt compelled, they felt pressured to pay Brandon Aiyuk. Obviously, in retrospect, that blew up in their faces, but now they have a way to salvage it just because, ironically, it's gotten so bad. If Aiyuk had just wanted to collect paychecks and be lazy, all he had to do was show up to his rehab appointments, and he still had $27 million guaranteed this year. He blew those guarantees. The 49ers are very happy for that because that found a way to get out from underneath this contract. It still did appear, though, that they were going to have to eat an acceleration of dead money over the course of this offseason. But if Aiyuk keeps this up, if he doesn't do the logical, if he doesn't act the obvious way, then the 49ers can just sit there on his contract as is and, again, smooth out the salary cap hits of the prorations and only absorb $8 million per year, which would be even less than they're currently absorbing from Brandon Aiyuk's contract. Right now, it's a $14 million or so cap hit, but if he doesn't show up, then he doesn't get this year's option bonus. We don't expect him to get that either way, but the 49ers can just sit there and continue stiff-arming those salary cap hits into the future. I don't think this would make Commanders fans all too happy. Commanders fans have seen very certain that Brandon Aiyuk is just going to sign up for their team when the 49ers finally do release him. But A, the 49ers have to be compelled to release Brandon Aiyuk before they do something like that. And B, Brandon Aiyuk actually has to want to continue playing football, and your team probably has to be convinced that he wants to continue playing football before something like that happens. And when we haven't seen a single video of Brandon Aiyuk working out, very, very different than 2024 when he was running in places like this, just in random parks, catching passes, hauling in deep balls. Combine that with the fact that he's not taking his agent's advice, he's not doing the obvious. I mean, you will have to wonder what Mike Garafolo has wondered, what I've wondered, or a lot of people are wondering, does this guy even want to be out on the field anymore? Definitely some food for thought as we talk about that 49ers pass game moving into 2026. Of course, the 49ers can also still benefit from in-house. When we talk about Jacob Cowing and his speed, that ties directly into the Jed Fish piece that I wrote. Played under Fish for the University of Arizona, worked against Ephesians Prysock, 49ers rookie cornerback back at Arizona. Jordan Watkins, he also moves. I mean, you talk about Dejon Stribbling and Ole Miss. Well, Jordan Watkins played at Ole Miss before Dejon Stribbling. And then they've got undrafted free agents as well. Wesley Grimes out of NC State's an interesting player. He's got an impressive highlight reel, bigger receiver at 6'2", and then the smaller one is Will Pauling. Vertical leap of over 40 inches for Will Pauling. So every single prospect that the 49ers brought in this year, especially ones that they drafted, but Pauling is a UDFA, plus athleticism. I mean, the one thing about this 49ers draft class that is a unifier, these rookies are athletic, and in the crapshoot that is the draft, I do think that it is smart to tether your player pursuit around an objective measurement. Some guys are going to work out, some guys aren't, but at least the guys that do work out, they're going to be able to jump out of the gym. Plus athletes that can really take your program to another level. And the 49ers, one of the slowest offenses in football over the past 2 years, got a lot faster, a lot more explosive, and even at the position at the X where Mike Evans isn't really a speedster at 33, he's a gravitational force, right? Moving that safety over. That opens up room for everybody else. It makes everybody else seem faster. So it is all connected. Now, here at Stanford, the alma mater, I just flew back into the Bay Area. On the way down to the Dwight Clark Legacy Series event at the Hammer Theater in San Jose, which is actually part of San Jose State's campus. Bill Walsh, a San Jose State alumnus, and then obviously became the Stanford coach before he became the 49ers coach. So I thought this was thematic. I thought that we could stop here at Stanford because we've seen some great pass games at Stanford over the years. Even before the Bill Walsh era, John Elway as the Cardinals quarterback, and then of course Andrew Luck, who's now the GM of Stanford football. I was the announcer here, the student radio announcer at Stanford when Andrew Luck was the quarterback, and the Stanford team, I mean, that was a high-powered unit. Richard Sherman had actually just moved from receiver to cornerback, and I think the 2010 Stanford team, one of the most talented that we'll ever see on the West Coast. And I mean, they toe-to-toe with some of those USC teams as far as the NFL guys that they produced, and they went in there and they stomped USC 55-21 in that 2009 season. That was Pete Carroll's last year at USC. Jim Harbaugh, the coach at Stanford, that was the what's your deal game, set up the 49ers-Seahawks rivalry of a few years later quite well. But all the beautiful passing offense that we've seen here at Stanford, obviously a lot of it carried over to the 49ers through Bill Walsh. Well, now the 49ers are going to try to regain some aesthetically pleasing receiver production. They've got the quarterback to do it. Now they need some receivers to separate. They've ranked so poorly in those ways. And, you know, I'll also add that a big part of it is the run game. The 49ers were inefficient running the football last year. It's all tied together, especially with Kyle Shanahan liking play action as much as he does. If you don't run efficiently, you will not pass efficiently. And the 49ers had their worst run game of the entire Shanahan era last year. So the issue that we've outlined time and time again has been that perimeter blocking. The receivers were not able to get the job done on the outside for the 49ers last year. If the receivers do a better job separating, catching, and producing yards after the catch, which hasn't been great for the 49ers, their blocking job will get easier because the defense is destabilized. The defense is not sure if run or pass is coming. Vice versa also applies. If the receivers do a better job blocking and the run game does better, then the pass game is going to have more opportunities. The 49ers found themselves in a doom loop last year where neither was efficient. The blocking on the perimeter, the catching was not good, so they had a quarterback working with very, very little. He still excelled. Purdy was still awesome last year, but the ceiling of offensive production as a whole for San Francisco is so much higher. And that is why they have invested in the receiver room. They're turning the page from Brandon Aiyuk, and maybe they're going to have some financial benefits that they didn't initially expect if Brandon Aiyuk is indeed done. If he does indeed go ghost from now until eternity, well, the 49ers just keep that contract as is. Pay the cap bills of the money that you've already given out to Brandon Aiyuk. Maybe you recoup some of that money. Who knows if the 49ers go after it. That can also help them with the salary cap. But essentially, the money that had been earmarked for Aiyuk and for Jawan Jennings now going to Mike Evans, to Christian Kirk, and a lot left over for more. Dre Greenlaw might be back in part because of some of that money that has freed up. So sometimes when life gives you lemons, you got to make lemonade, and that's what the 49ers have tried to do as they build their receiving room without Brandon Aiyuk. Sandwich of the day, it is a non-city sandwich since we're down here in the peninsula. Fambrini's Cafe in Palo Alto, the chimichurri surf and turf. One of the best in the Bay Area, by extension, one of the best in the world, right on El Camino Real. Surf and turf, go for it. Tri-tip and that shrimp. Fambrini's, it's awesome, right here next to Stanford.